It's one of nine. It's one of nine federally recognized tribes. Um, and since the recording started after I spoke, I'm going to say that one more time, not to be repetitive, but again, I'm Julie Seastrom, Honest Coos, Tribal Council for the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Sayusa Indians. We're one of nine federally recognized tribes in Oregon, and we humbly thank you for including us in the process, in the best interest of our children in the state of Oregon.
Thank you, Julie. Kate, how about you? Who are you?
Oh my. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kate Wilcox. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with the Oregon Health Authority in the Public Health Division, the Family and Child Health section, formerly known as Maternal and Child Health. And it's in our section where the nurse home visiting programs out of OHA reside. So that's Nurse Family Partnership, Babies First. We work a lot with Cocoon, which is in our sister agency over to OHSU, and Family Connects Oregon. So
Thanks, Kate. Brenda, how about you?
Hi, Brenda Kamini. I'm use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director for a short time for the Early Learning Hub of Central Oregon. And my capacity in this work is representing hub directors that are working on home visiting.
Thanks, Brenda. Joel.
Hi, I'm Joel Metlin, he, him, his pronouns, the Deputy Director of Programs for the Department of Early Learning and Care. And that includes the home visiting programs that we help fund. Thanks.
Peg Miller.
Hi, I'm Peg Miller. I'm a pediatrician from McMinnville, a member of the Early Learning Council, and co-chair along with Peter. And I apologize. The bugs finally got me, so I'm a little under the weather.
I'm sorry, Peg. Kali, how about you? Who are you, Kali? Who are you?
Deep questions for a Tuesday afternoon. Kali Thornlab, CEO at Children's Institute. We are a policy organization focused, policy and advocacy and practice organization focused on children birth for prenatal through 5th grade. And we are the backbone organization for the Early Childhood Coalition, which is a coalition of advocacy works across the state. Who are voices for our youngest children. Thanks, Peter. I'm so many things, but that is what I am.
Thanks, Kali. Peg King, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Peg King, she, her pronouns. I'm a portfolio manager at HealthShare, the CCO in the Metro region, and I oversee all of our strategies and investments related to children, youth, and families, and work very closely with the early learning hubs up here, and also the public health, maternal child health, home visiting folks as well. We work really closely with all of them at HealthShare. So happy to be here.
Nice. So that's your new colleagues, Brittany, on the committee. I'm obviously on the committee too, but we also have our associates, including our chair of Early Learning Council, Sue Miller. So Sue, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Peter. Welcome, Brittany. Delighted to have you a part of this committee. And I do chair the Early Learning Council, and this is our only standing committee. So we place a very high priority on the work that you all are doing. And I appreciate Peter and Peg taking the leadership on it. So thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Kara, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Hi, Brittany and committee. I'm Kara Copeland. I serve as a consultant. I'm not officially on the committee, but I'm working on a project for home visiting funders and advocacy partnership, which I will talk more about later, but glad to be here.
Thanks, Kara. Kristen.
Hi, everybody, and welcome, Brittany. My name is Kristen Miyamoto. I use she and they pronouns, and I am the Regional Home Visiting System Transformation Coordinator with COVES. So I do work statewide, but I have a regional focus and perspective and get to work with some of our partners who are doing this very important work.
Thanks, Kristen. Rebecca, how about you?
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Brown. I'm the State Home Visiting Transformation Manager at Coves and work very closely with Kristen in supporting regional voice in the state implementation of home visiting work. And nice to see you again. We met recently. Glad to see you here on the committee.
Thanks, Rebecca. Beth, how about you?
Thanks, Peter. I'm Beth Green, she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Early Childhood and Family Support Research at Portland State and also the Director of the Cove Center, and happy to be here.
Great. And Brittany, I'm Peter Buckley. I work with Southern Oregon Success, which is a collaboration in Jackson and Josephine counties to support children and families, a member of the Early Learning Council, a member of Kali's board on the Children's Institute as well. So that's who we are. Welcome. Who are you, Brittany, and what brings you here?
Nice to meet everyone. I'm Brittany Kasim-Carew. I just recently joined the Oregon Housing Community Service as a policy and operations analyst. My focus over there is kind of crafting and implementing housing policies that create like an equitable and sustainable solutions for Oregonians. And I'm passionate about driving change and expanding access to essential services, which ties directly into the work that you guys have all been doing in the early childhood home visiting system. And I believe that sustainable housing and stable housing is critical for this foundation for families, and it directly impacts early childhood outcomes. So I'm hoping to collaborate with the committee and to ensure like policies around housing and family services are well aligned. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great to have you again. Thanks, Brittany. So we have some meeting goals here that might be on the next slide. Is that we want to be able to learn about the current home visiting system network. So Brittany, this will be a great kind of overview for you, but for all of us, there's so many moving pieces. It's great for us to get an update on where we are from the center, from our partner updates, and then from funding and advocacy folks. We want to build a shared understanding of the early childhood home visiting landscape and provide some input on recommendations that we have been brought to us as well. So that's the gist of our meeting for today. I think we go next to the updates from the Center for Coordinating Oregon Home Visiting Systems, COVES, and I'll toss it over to you, Beth.
Sure, thanks, Peter. So just to give you a little update on some things that we have in progress that will be coming out soon. Well, soon meaning like January. We're going to talk today a lot about the Early Childhood Home Visiting Landscape Report, which we've been also calling the Opportunity Maps, and all of you got a advanced copy of that document. That is the product of a huge amount of work by our team this year to really try to understand what is going on across the state with home visiting systems, and we'll have a lot of chances to talk about that moving forward. We also have, you may recall, we did a state systems evaluation back in the fall of last year, and we shared some of that data with folks at our October summit. But we have a report that's going to summarize that just so that we can use it to really have our baseline laid out in terms of systems, components, and where at least our advisory structure and key partners who are involved at that level think we are right now in terms of building a more equitable system and how we've been working together to do that. So that report will come out in January as well. We are, as I said, I didn't say this, but I'll say it again. I think I said in my email that we're waiting to distribute the landscape report fully to do a broader dissemination until we have the executive summary standalone document translated into Spanish so that we can send all of those documents out and post them to our website at the same time. But we did want our advisory groups who've been waiting for this report to have an early copy. So that's what you received last week, I believe, in your email. And then we are working right now with our steering team as well as with our funder partners on a year 2 work plan. That is something that we meet with them Thursday to get another round of input on, just laying out like what exactly are we doing in all of these like interconnected webs of systems work. What are the key activities for our COVES team for the year? So you'll have a chance to see that after we meet, probably sometime in February, and then probably be sending this out for an email approval to you. So look for that coming across your email, and hoping for any changes that you might have or approvals of the work plan so that we can move forward with that. And then the other thing we've been working on for a little while is our theory of action, which is a part of one of the original recommendations, was to make sure that we had a strong theory of action for guiding the systems work that we could really use as a touchstone. So that has been something that we've been drafting. We've gotten feedback from our steering team. We're getting some other community feedback, partner feedback on that, and then we'll be sharing that out with you all probably at our March meeting. So look for that.
We just wanted to take a little bit of time to just offer an opportunity for folks to share any updates that you might have in your world about home visiting in your agency or organization. So I don't know if anybody has any they want to start off with. Any news around home visiting? Kate.
Yeah. With the University Offered Home Visiting, Family Connects International, or Family Connects Oregon, I've had quite the day because the bills are starting to drop, Peter, over to 2,200 of them. So there's a lot going on right now. But anyway, one of our metrics is for success, or is the outreach and how well we're reaching all families with the service, or at least being able to offer it, but completing the service, because that's really where you get the results. And so our sites have been struggling, and the model developers think about 60% of families offered it. Really, if you can get that many to have services, that sort of saturation point. Obviously, we're hoping that once the program is mature, that will be a lot higher. But our sites have really been struggling to get up to that. But I wanted to share that last month, Malheur County, love them, hit 100%. They provided services to all 8 babies, granted, but all babies that were born in that month, within that time period. So I just wanted to do a shout out that we are making progress. It's sometimes 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but we're getting there. And so I just wanted to share that little bright spot.
Thanks, Kate. Love it. All the bright spots are welcome. Any other updates from anyone? I can offer a brief update with Jackson Josephine counties, working with our hub and our other community partners. We're still working on development of a navigation system for the region to try to coordinate everybody who helps family navigate services in healthcare, education, human services, and public safety. We have a work group focused on a shared training program that would be available to home visiting programs, but also to the CCOs, the clinics, and the community-based organizations that offer navigation services. So we're trying to develop that system so navigators know who else is helping families navigate services, with home visiting being a very important part of that. Any other updates from anyone?
I have just a quick one. I don't think I've been on here since we've actually pulled it off, but we had a region-wide across all home visiting programs training for home visitors on infant massage, and had families come in both days and be coached on infant massage by nurses, paraprofessional programs, everybody from Healthy Families, Early Head Start. And that's a certified program with Loving Touch International that we used and have been getting rave reviews. We see that tying in on a broader sense with some of the self-regulation that's been identified as being needed, that the younger we start, the better. And the instructors for the class even talk to the parents about how to incorporate the theory with a little bit older kiddos than infants and toddlers. And so excited about what that can bring. Plus, it brought them all into a room together for 2 days talking about their programs and meeting each other. And so we're excited to see where that goes. And Paola was responsible for all of that. So after I'm gone, reach out to her.
That's great, Brenda. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, well, if no one else has an update, then let's just keep moving on and we'll.
I have just a quick one, Peter. It's
Please
not
do.
Coves related, but since Pamela's not here, I'll share that. So another project that I work on with our McVie team here in Oregon is has been a workforce study, and we're getting ready to release a new learning brief. You've seen a couple of these come out already, but this latest one is on supporting wellness for home visitors through developing strong organizational culture and climate. And a couple of things that are really interesting, I think, that I want to just shout out in that brief is that it's focused on, and really one of the first data collections that's looked at experiences of racial and linguistic discrimination and bias by home visitors on the job. And talking about that as a compounding stressor that those folks are dealing with in their work, but also the importance of and mitigating factor that can be provided through really strong anti-racist leadership in organizations. So I think, and that is important not just for our home visitors of color, but for all of the home visitors in our sample. So I'm just really excited for that to come out and then to think about, and we'll be talking with our McVie partners about, well, what does that mean in terms of other trainings or supports do organizational and program leaders need in order to be able to create that kind of supportive work environment for home visitors? So I just wanted to share that with you all.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah.
Hey, Brittany, if at any time when people are tossing around acronyms, if you need to know, McVie, Beth, is McKinney-Vento. How do you pronounce that?
Maternal and Infant Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. It's a major federal funding stream for home visiting. It goes through our OHA office and out to 3 different models across the state.
Thanks, Beth. Kara.
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in and just highlight a project that I'm working on for Healthy Families Oregon. And we are working on, we've been working on since last August, looking at how they distribute funding across the state. So I thought that would be curious for this group, but some of the things that we are uncovering is looking at what some of the disparities that exist in communities where we have Healthy Families home visiting programs happening, and we have a list of value statements that the network has pulled together, and we're kind of in the final stretch of developing some distribution model that really centers itself on those core values focused on equity. And I think some of the things, lots of it is interesting to me as a spreadsheet person, and a data person. But I think the linguistic isolation has been an interesting data point. We've been looking at birth rates and a 3-year average of birth rates by county and what's happening in terms of the population and demographics, and looking at some of the geographic disparities that we see in trying to implement home visiting programs across very rural, very large sectors. So that report, I'm not sure if that will be an external report, but been working with Gwen, and now we'll be working with Dorothy and Heidi on disseminating that, and just having a more transparent and equitable distribution of funding for that program. So
Excellent. Thank you, Kara. Well, if no one else has any updates, then I'm going to go right back to Kara and say, how about an update on funding and advocacy partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. And Rebecca, I'll let you, I don't know if you can grab that link. I put together just a very, very brief report. Not fancy at all, but I just wanted to, we've been running the home visiting partnership, we're calling it, for about 3 months now. So I have a quarterly report. This is a group that was a spin-off of a work group that came out of this committee. And that work group is really focused on legislative funding and advocacy, as the title would imply. We've got 33 people that are involved at the core of that, and then we're getting input from, of course, from every program and meeting individually with programs and getting some broader input into what we're trying to do in Salem. And, session starts next week. And so, as I said, those bills are dropping, and we've identified key legislators that this group, which is comprised of information sharers from the state agencies, and then we have advocates that are in Salem, in the building, talking with legislators and helping to craft strategy. And of course, some service providers and program providers that are there to help ground us in what is most important in ensuring that we have an equitable lens, and we're listening to all components of the variety of ways that home visiting is rolling out. I think some of the interesting things that we've done just in the last couple, we've only had 2 meetings. We've been just very briefly working on this, but we have $26 million of legislative requests going in to Salem. That is above current service levels. And when we compare that to, there's right around kind of I call it my back of the napkin math. It is on a spreadsheet, but about $494 million of funding across various, most of the programs. There's a few programs that aren't included in that just very, very tentative number. But as we've been collecting that, I think what it tells me is funding home visiting is complicated. Beth's going to be talking about some strategies that are going to get us closer to understanding these later. But we're going to be doing our best to ensure that we put our best foot forward and talk about home visiting, not in these siloed approaches across models and culturally specific organizations, but home visiting is one community of practice. We have one collective impact that we have on Oregon, and that's the message that with all of the new legislators that we have in Salem, and frankly, some of our current legislators who are not new, we need to elevate that message. So my work is to help coordinate this group and to ensure that we have the tools and the strategies needed in the next 6 months to make that happen.
Carrie, is there a 1-pager yet or a 2-pager?
It's currently 3 pages. So I moved from calling it a 1-pager to
Okay.
Dana and I are working on that. The CI team has been very supportive, and their comms department right now is taking an ugly Google Doc and making it into something beautiful. And it will complement what Beth's team has already put together as well, that really tries to give a snapshot of what is happening in Oregon in terms of home visiting, and really hitching ourselves to where's the legislature going. In this next session, some of the things that we are keenly aware of is that the governor and the legislature are, as they should be, are keenly interested in behavioral health and mental health strategies. And what are those strategies, Brenda was talking about, that help us at a very early age turn the tide on later outcomes in life. So I'm excited for that to come out, and the partnership, the home visiting partnership members have been key in getting that data there. But I think we hope to have that out probably by the end of January, early February.
Great. Any other questions for Kara about this work?
I just want to say a huge thank you because this has never happened before. We've never been sort of a united front before. And just being able to tell the story about how all these parts are critically important for families of Oregon is just something we've been trying to say and never been able to say it quite succinctly enough to where the legislature really understands it. So I just want to say a huge thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think, you know, there's several here on this call that it was their brainchild. I'm just happy to be doing the work. And you know, Kate, to that end, let's wait and see if we have gotten our message across.
Well, you got to start somewhere, and you know it may be socializing this session, and we get a little bit more next session, but we'll see what we can do. But if we don't take that first step, we'll never get there. So
you're right, it's a long game.
Yeah.
Julie.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who have done the work that you've been doing to get us to the point where we are now. The commentary from yourself and also from Beth is encouraging when you speak about you know, the inclusivity aspects of multiple languages, multiple cultures. So there seems to be even though we're one Oregon and we're one community as far as home visiting is concerned, there seems to be a glimmer of understanding that there's things that we need to do that for different people coming from all the different facets that we're coming from, so that we're serving the children and the families in a culturally appropriate manner, and how you've got things that are being delivered not only in English but in Spanish. And as time goes by, we may pick up other languages that are dominant in Oregon that are spoken. But at least that's a beginning. So those two things are encouraging for me in the mix. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie. Sue.
I just wanted to add two other quick thank yous. One is to the Oregon Community Foundation because they are funding Kara's contract. And I think everybody on this call probably has worked with OCF. And then also wanted to thank Kali and the Children's Institute and Dana Hepper for being willing to really help house this partnership because it's sort of embedded in CI now. So Kali, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sue.
I appreciate you saying that, Sue. Sorry, Peter. I was just going to add to that, that this idea came out of this committee meeting at our summit in October. And it just moved so fast and got so much ground. And I'm so appreciative of, like, it's so exciting to have Kara supporting, bringing those advocates to the table and trying to at least start the process of developing shared advocacy for home visiting. So this is awesome.
I look forward to the 3-pager.
Absolutely.
So, Kara, did you also want to give an update on we had discussions about a possible pilot project to propose, but give us an update on that.
Yeah, Beth, I don't feel free to jump in, but you know, the pilot that we had conceived last fall, you know, I think some of the issues around timing and our ability to really socialize that concept, to have a really clear partner engagement around what is happening around home visiting coordination, mixed with another external factor that is happening right now is the rollout of preschool promise coordination. And so DELC is working with the Head Start Coalition and the Early Learning Hub Coalition to iron out some of the kinks in that in the rollout of the preschool promise universal enrollment. I don't know. Joel, I'm not saying the right things, but you know what
Coordinated enrollment, yeah.
Yes, coordinated enrollment. Thank you. I'm with Kate of like my afternoon words are gone. So I think there was some contextual pieces of we heard this both from the advocates and we heard this from the Home Visiting Collaborative. The temperature is not quite right to be investing in a pilot. So Beth and I and Rebecca have talked about some other strategies and a slower roll that we might take to look and investigate. Okay, what is needed and what's a more planful approach to that, and how do we fund it? So I think there are some other potential avenues of funding a pilot if it is the right strategy in our toolbox.
Great.
Beth, please add of what I've missed.
That was perfect.
Well, we would love it to be universal enrollment, but right now it's coordinated. It'd be universal coordinated enrollment would be great. Okay, the next thing we have is an update, Beth, on the fiscal analysis and work group formation.
Yeah, so I can just share with this group another thing that has been moving along, and we talked about this at our December meeting. We are going to be identifying a contractor to move forward with doing a fiscal analysis for early childhood home visiting. So trying to map out these complicated funding streams and help us bring an equity lens to thinking about those funding streams and which programs have access, which families are getting served, and where the gaps are. So I just wanted to update you. We agreed at the last meeting to pause so we could do a little bit more due diligence in trying to find contractors. We do have 2 applicants at this point, but we have also decided we put together a working team, a work group to first select the contractors and then to oversee and partner with whoever is selected to do this. And I wanted to share that with you all. We have on that work group, Peg King has agreed to participate from the committee. Peg is also connected with another innovative new project that's being funded by the Perigee Foundation around funding and financing, especially for developing capacity for culturally specific organizations. So that's a great intersection, and super thankful to you, Peg, for being willing to be part of our work group. And then our other members are Mary Geeland from ODHS, Drew Strayer, who's the McVie Systems Manager from OHA, Donalda Dodson from OCDC, and Dana Castano, who's the Delk Tribal Liaison and sits on our steering team, is going to be on that, as well as, I hope, Kara Copeland, who's doing the work with Healthy Families Oregon. So that's our work group. Unless there's anyone else at this meeting who's dying to participate, you're welcome to join us. But we're going to get started and have our first meeting, hopefully the end of January, very first week of February, to do an initial selection for the contractor. So excited to share that update with you.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody? Hearing none, we'll move on to the landscape report.
All right, thank you, Peter. So this, we were really debating how to talk with the committee today about all of the information in the landscape, because if you opened up the document when it was sent, you saw that it was quite a meaty document, and it really does reflect just a huge amount of work by our team to gather and compile information from virtually every region of our state. But we wanted to spend some time today just really giving you sort of a orientation to the report, like what's in there high level, and then dive in, take advantage of the folks on this call to really start to think about the recommendations that came out of that report, and get some hopefully ideas and stimulate some thoughts around what are the clear next steps that we can take to really move the system along. So that's where we landed for today, saying this is just a first sort of taste of this document, and we will be coming back to it, I think, many, many times in the year to come, because there's just such a lot of great information. All right, next slide, Rebecca, thank you. Okay, So just orientation, the purpose of the report is really to provide information to drive action for us as we collectively try to move towards our vision of having a system of equitably accessible, universally offered early childhood home visiting programs that meet unique cultural and linguistic needs of families across the state. So that's the purpose. The purpose is not to just be information that sits in a document, but to really be information that can be used to drive action. So the hope. Okay. We, as I said, we talked to lots of people, mostly Kristen, Rebecca, and Callie and Ron on our team. 42 early childhood systems leaders, including hub directors from every hub, many public health and maternal child health staff, Family Connects Oregon community alignment specialists, and maternal and infant early childhood home visiting fund managers, as well as 22 different program model leads across the state. So that just shows you there's 22 different program models of early childhood home visiting, which is a lot. And that's not all the programs. We did the state system survey, which you know about, and we also did other kinds of information gathering around learning from other states and reviewing the literature and things like that. When you open up the document, it's divided into 6 sections. There is a standalone executive summary, which really was hard to write, but what we tried to do was to boil down and then really focus on the key recommendations and putting those forward. And then if you open up the document itself, it has 5 additional chapters, and at least 3 of those chapters, the 3 systems elements, we wrote with an eye towards being sort of standalone. So that if you're interested in knowing about family leadership, you could look at that section and learn a lot about family leadership and what's happening there as a standalone piece. But we, of course, hope that everyone will engage themselves with the document more deeply. There's some good information, I think, also for our partners around just sort of the lay of the land and defining key terms for early childhood home visiting, because that was a question early on, even among folks in this committee, like, what exactly do we mean by early childhood home visiting? What is it? What programs are we talking about here? Because it's really kind of a vague, when you talk about home visiting, that's a service delivery mechanism, right? And a lot of programs deliver services in the home. But early childhood home visiting is a special slice of the early childhood pie that we're really focused on. We have a whole section where we really tried to lift up the voices and specific recommendations from regional partners for state leadership. So we said, as we talked to people, you know, what do you think state leaders should do? What are the most important things for you from where you sit in your county or region? What do you think state leaders should do? So there's a whole section of that in the report, as well as then our distillation of sort of key things that we thought were the most actionable and the most important to frame up for moving this work ahead in alignment with, you know, moving forward from our original recommendations that came to this committee, from this committee to the center. So lots of pieces to dig into. All right, next slide. Okay. Just to give you a sense of our frame as we put the information forward, we really tried to focus on the idea of opportunities, right? To really use a strengths-based approach and trying to lift up, where are those like nuggets? Where are the pieces of work that are happening across our state around coordinated intake and enrollment, around shared leadership for home visiting, around family leadership? And how can we learn from those, see what they're doing, and also see, like, how can we get that work happening more consistently across the state? Because I think we all recognize that home visiting hasn't gotten the attention that other things have in terms of coordinated systems development, maybe. And it looks really different depending on where you look in terms of what's happening and who's involved and who's taking the lead, which is the great news, because it means it doesn't have to look the same everywhere, but it also means that some places have really been able to move ahead and do some things with resources that they have, while other places are still like trying to figure it out. So let's help those places that are trying to figure it out by being able to really elevate and share learnings from the places that have been doing it. And then, as I said, learning from them, like what gets in the way, like what still needs to change so that you can really get out there and continue to do your great work at the regional level. And what can the state partners really do? What are the messages that state agency and other folks need to hear? So that's the summary of like what's in the report. Now I'm going to move to recommendations. And as I'm talking about these, it's going to be a lot. So again, just saying, don't expect this to be the first time that we're sort of wrestling with the recommendations and next steps, but wanted to have a chance to kind of put them at the high level in front of you all today. But as we're talking about this, I'm really hoping that you can keep 3 questions in mind, and we'll come back at the end and talk about these. First of all, looking at these recommendations, what are the things that we, meaning collectively, this committee, the Early Learning Council, our other agency and regional leadership, what can we do soon? What are some things that are really clear next steps? And then who needs to do that? Is this something that DELC needs to do? Is this something OHA needs to do? Is this something they do together? Is this a hub director thing? Is it a program model thing? Like, who is the thing? Who is the person or people or agencies that need to come together in order to make things move forward? And then finally, how do we get there? So we have resources. COVES is here to support and facilitate action. But we are not the decision makers, and in most cases don't have the power to make the changes that need to happen, but we can help build those connections and keep the momentum going. And then there may be roles for you as a committee member or with others that you work with in your agency or organizations. So think about immediate actions. What can we do soon? Some things are going to be lower hanging fruit than others. Who needs to do it? And then how do we get there? What's needed for next steps? Any questions before I dive in? Okay. And these are lifted pretty much straight out of your executive summary. So you have that document and you have the full report. But I'm going to walk through each of the sort of 5 major areas of recommendations, all of which really do mirror and reflect key recommendations that were made and officially adopted by the Early Learning Council back a year or so ago. So the first is to strengthen regional early childhood home visiting systems governance and to do it in a way that includes family leadership. One of the things that we heard is that there hasn't been clear guidance to hub directors, for example, around what is their role for early childhood home visiting systems. They have a clear role in terms of things like coordinated enrollment, and they've had a clear role in terms of driving other pieces of the early childhood system and have gotten like funded for that. But there hasn't been real clear expectations for early childhood home visiting specifically. I think what we heard the most, I would say this was such a resounding theme, is like we want guidance and we want expectations that partnership will happen between, say, hubs and public health, just to use 2 big examples, but ODHS and ODE and all the others, but with flexibility for how that looks locally, right? So don't tell us that hubs have to take the lead. In some places, maybe public health takes the lead, but that there is an expectation that they partner. So that was one really clear piece. The other thing they said was, there's lots of places doing that, and they have so many resources and templates for memorandums of agreement that they've developed, data sharing agreements, agendas, lists of who needs to be at the table. Like, could somebody like compile those and share them with the places where it's not as far along so that they could help and learn from the regions where where these pieces are falling into place? So that was a clear ask. And then, of course, not surprisingly, we heard a lot about the need to resource home visiting systems work. And it is apparent, I think, that places where there have been some additional resources specifically for systems building have been able to take the work farther, right? So we have our Ford family funded regions in the state, Eastern Oregon, SCREL, and South Central Oregon. And then we have other places like Central Oregon, Brenda's team in High Desert, that have been able to leverage things like some McVie systems dollars, some FCO community alignment dollars. Those are not equitably those are not available to all communities across the state, but it really does take resources to fund systems work at the regional level. I'm going to keep going, but if anybody has questions, stop me, and then we can come back to any of these. Sue, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to suggest that you do pause for questions, because there was a lot in
Yeah,
what
there was a lot.
said. So I just don't know if people or comments, not just questions.
Or even quick reflections on, you know, actionable next steps. I don't want to take, I know we could spend probably a lot of time, a whole meeting talking about any one of these, but actionable next steps, the who or the what's needed. Julie.
Again, the work that has been done is incredible. The only thing that I'll come back to whenever I'm here is just that as far as the tribes are concerned, there's languages that are specific to each of the different tribes, and there's different cultural ceremony and practices that are different to each of the tribes. So like today, and in several meetings before this, I have been here, but I'm only representing one of the 9 tribes. So I don't know if this information goes out to all 9 tribes, but if it doesn't, that would be something that would be nice if it could be added. And we have different meetings annually that all 9 tribes are present. So I don't know if y'all would want to be like a presenter, you know, not to present like what we're doing today, you know, this 2-hour slot and that kind of thing, but just like, you know, a 15-minute introduction or you know, some kind of a link between the tribal families and children and the non-tribal, you know, just so that there could be some kind of a bridge or communication process with the 9 tribes. Our education director, Jemai Wassman, he put in for the preschool promise process, but he wasn't able to get it up and running this year. So it's something that he's interested in, we're interested in, and we hope to be participating in it maybe next year, the 2025, 2026. But as y'all know from having done this for the many years you've done it, it takes a lot to get something up and running. So you know, that's if that can be part, you know, of the mix as time goes by, that would be nice. Just some kind of a bridge or connection to all 9 tribes.
100%. I love that idea, Julie, and I will, yeah, let's, we can make sure and make that happen. I'd love to get some of this in front of the 9 tribes, and also to say there's the importance of partnering with tribal government and tribal communities is a theme in the report and a huge area for growth. It's sort of one of these areas where there's some little bits of work happening, but not like there's there's a lot of room for growth. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, Khalid.
Just building on that, I'm a little
kind of confused about whether it's the numbering seems different on your slide than the report. But I had a question there on page 5. It mentions that there aren't any tribal or cultural specific.
I'm sorry, I'm really struggling to understand. You're sort of garbled.
Hear me?
That's better.
On page 5 of the executive summary, there's mention of the fact that there are no tribal or cultural specific programs included in this. It's speaking a little bit to what Julie was sharing, but I'm just wondering why those programs. On one hand, it says they're critical, but then it says they're not included. And I made a note of why and how are we moving there. So the numbering, like I said, on your slides is different than this executive summary. So I did write notes as I read it, but I'm not sure if it fits in this section, but because she brought up the tribal exposure, it reminded me of my own wondering about why those programs are included.
So Kelly, you're speaking specifically to the comment that with a few notable exceptions, tribes are not largely involved in existing coordinated intake and referral systems. And I think that is a really important question. I think probably my guess would be because most of the places that are working on those are starting with our kind of core state-funded programs. The evidence-based models that are funded through McVie and Healthy Families and Early Head Start, which often do not include culturally specific partners. Now, I know Brenda, I see you raising your hand because I know you do have some partnerships with Warm Springs, and that is in the report as well. I do want to just put a little bit of a pin in that because it's specific to the issue of coordinated intake and enrollment, but I think it also speaks to coordinated governance. And Kali, if you're following along the executive summary, it's the next section where there's like the black boxes that have the specific next steps. That's what I'm tracking for this. So yeah, not the 3 systems elements. Yeah. Yeah, Brenda.
I appreciate all of that. That wasn't actually why I raised my hand this time, but yes, I agree with that as well. One of the things that I thought about as I looked at this, and maybe there's more clarity when I have time to dig into the full document, but in the executive summary, one of the things that came to mind in this section for me, it talks about cross-sector relationships, but the leadership in this place, I think it would be really helpful to have, whether it's a metric or some sort of way to assess as people are stepping in or organizations are stepping into leadership, kind of how they deal with the web that this all touches. Because I think of this a little bit like a spider web. And for us, like when we were asked as a region to identify somebody to take on leadership for the community inclusion team, what our understanding of that leadership would be looked really narrow. And I wouldn't want this to appear that same way because it's caused us to rethink who takes that on. And this work, frankly, touches that same work of the community inclusion team systems that are developing in regions, the work around suspension, expulsion policy and training and that work as well, and even more than that. But just figuring out a way operationally when this is put in place, that those sorts of things are all part of the consideration. So we aren't, again, siloing a more narrow look at how this moves forward.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm going to move to the next slide. All right. So very strongly related to the first set of recommendations are these around family leadership. Again, really looking for some clear expectations that families with home visiting experience will be engaged in informing program system leadership and program development. And this is happening in a variety of different ways across the state right now. Some PACs, parent advisory councils that are held by DELC, have families with home visiting experience. Not very many of those PACs are focused very much on home visiting. We also have Family Connects Oregon community advisory boards, some of which also have parent groups or sections, but not consistently across the state. So again, just looking for the places where family leadership is happening that is related to either a program, a specific program, or to the system development itself, and trying to make sure that as we're lifting up home visiting systems work and trying to get that moved forward, that we make sure we have families engaged in that, those discussions and that decision making. Yeah, Khalid. Did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So I did have a question about this around how, and I apologize because I did not read the full report. I only
No expectations that people will have done that yet.
I'm curious how realistic this was. I mean, obviously I'm supportive of family engagement, but as I read this, I thought, is this something that has been proven to work in other places? That's a lot to ask of families. And so I wanted a little more clarity on what the expectation and what are realistic expectations of families, given families are managing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And there are definitely places that have done this. I mean, Michigan actually has a whole system of family leadership for their early childhood home visiting specifically, which is so amazing. And we've learned some from that. And we've also have a emerging family leadership group here in Oregon that Kristen Miyamoto is leading up, with some support from community partners, but really trying to think about, so family leadership, what is the role right now they're working on? And Kristen, I don't mean to speak for you. Do you want to share a little bit about what no? Family leadership group is doing? Are we calling it the family input group? Because we have not yet moved to acknowledging or recognizing their leadership role. It's more of an input role specifically. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. So currently we are convening a group called the Family Input Work Group. So it is an ad hoc, and they are advising on two very specific projects, one of them being the Family First amendment to their current plan. So Family First is trying to include more programs. So the Family Input Group has shared some of their thoughts around what families need, or who's at, the highest risk, and could be benefited by the Family First Fund. So that's one of the projects. And then the other project is COVES was asked to create like family leadership recommendations, which is mostly touched on in the report. But we wanted to make sure that families could provide input on those recommendations, and then could advise us on what family leadership in cross-sector early childhood home visiting looks like for this state. So that's the second big project that they're working on currently. I think your concern is about the capacity for families to be able to engage in this type of
whether or not
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a huge consideration. And in the report we talk about, we have to have the right supports in place. We need to compensate families not just for their time, but also for things like transportation and childcare and food. And I'm very energized by this group. Actually, a couple people from Brenda's region is part of this group, and they've been really, really excited to do this work. And I kind of last meeting, I kind of even tiptoed around like, you know, there's actually one more thing that we could do around the Family First project. I'm wondering if you folks would be open to that. And they immediately they said, if there's work to be done, we'll do it. And not to say that that's speaking for all families, but if we put the right supports in place, which obviously takes resources, and I think you're also speaking to how realistic is it that we can make those resources appear. But if we do have those resources, I think families are excited to engage, because when they can provide input into a system, they will also receive a system that was built by them and for them. And then we won't have to go back and say like, oops, we got this wrong, because we don't have the perspective of families of young children. And I would also like to refer back to our family leadership brief that Callie Lambarth wrote quite a while ago, but is still super relevant. We hold the framework of the spectrum of community engagement to ownership very close, and we keep that in mind always when we're talking about family leadership. So I can link that. I think it's on our Google site right now, so I can link that also. But that also speaks to some of the other work that other states are doing around family leadership for early childhood home visiting. I hope that didn't make it more confusing.
No, that was helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Brenda, I saw your comment in the chat. It is absolutely true. And that's sort of this last recommendation, that we need resources, technical assistance and support, not just for families, but for the professionals who are working to engage families. Like you have to have capacity development for really doing that work. And that's important to recognize. Yeah, thank you, Kelly, for that question. I think that's really important considerations, and hopefully we're attending at least to some of those. Again, supporting shared learning, providing some clear definitions and clear guidance with flexibility, and building on what's already there. Like there's nascent family leadership happening in a lot of spaces. So how do we use and engage home visiting voices in all those already existing places and structures? Okay, next slide. Okay, coordinated intake and enrollment systems. So here we're talking about, and this was really something that crystallized in my brain more than maybe ever before, the difference between service coordinate or system coordination and service coordination, which has to do with how do you get families into services in a way that's equitable and that gets them into a program that is the best fit for their needs. And there's a lot of work happening around this too, in various ways. Again, there are some really great tools that have been developed. So the recommendations were, again, let's at least have some expectations that our core home visiting programs are going to come to the table together and try to coordinate access to services. Like that was something we heard about in some regions. Like we tried to get people to the table, but we know there's a history of competition. There's a history of competition for families as well as resources. So, let's have some expectations that can help provide a foundation for those partnerships. Let's think about making I say this is hub region, not necessarily that the hub would hold it, but have a plan for trying to move towards more coordinated services for home visiting enrollment and intake. We learned a lot from Family Connects. They have a whole section in this part of the report, because that is part of what the opportunity is through Family Connects, is to do some systems alignment. And not all communities yet are Family Connects communities. But so how can we support those learnings and make sure that as Family Connects rolls out to more and more places, there's readiness, because there's already been some thinking and planning around this. And then one really concrete piece that we said that was helpful for a lot of places that have done this is you have to know who your programs are, right? You have to have a list of like, who are the various early childhood home visiting programs in your community, and then be able to bring them to the table. Otherwise, there can be a process that's not being as inclusive as maybe we want to be, because you're just including sort of the same old partners at the table instead of really trying to be more comprehensive and looking at where else are early childhood home visiting services being offered. So that's just 3 out of many other more detailed recommendations for this piece of work. It's a challenging piece, but it's also really, really important piece that's happening. Okay, next slide. Yeah, Peter.
Well, Beth, and that's the work you've been doing too. The document it's going to have the county by county listing of the home visiting programs, and that will be. So I don't know. We can support the hubs to make use of that information.
Yeah.
And I also like the work of the idea of discussing with the hubs, you know, about having a developed plan for each region. What is your coordination plan for each region? That's something that we might be able to talk to hubs as part of our work as a committee.
And there's some great examples of like, because there's a lot of agreements that like public health and other public health and non-public health home visiting programs have developed. Like I think about Yamhill, they have a whole slew of really great tools that could be shared with other places. Data sharing agreements, things like that, that in some places it's really gotten in the way, but I as a data person myself, I'm like, there is a way around this. Places are figuring this out. It's not something that can't be solved. But even just starting with that relational table and sort of getting to know the other programs and setting the stage for coordination, I think can be huge. And yeah, the tools and things that could be compiled and brought to bear as examples that could help places move forward more easily and build on the work that some communities have been doing for a number of years already, I think is important, an important place where we can maybe take some actions moving forward.
Nice.
So Beth, I'd like to just put Brenda and Joel on the spot, since following up Peter's comment about the hubs. So Brenda, as a hub leader, who's been a leader for years, and Joel, you're on the phone, I know, but hopefully you're still connected to this call. How do you feel about where the hubs have been identified in this document?
I think this is really consistent with the language that we've been working on with our DELC Early Learning Council build work moving forward. And I think it's good to be intentional about calling out home visiting. And we said that during that build work. I do think, just thinking back on some examples, and I hate to harp, but it's the one that came to mind the quickest because we're in the midst of it now, but the way things like the community inclusion team was rolled out, there wasn't as much intentionality about understanding what the overall goals and intent are. But I think there are some good key language in here about having a plan, convening partners that are that's really consistent, and then deciding where that leadership lives and if it's joint leadership. And so those were just some key components that I think were left out of some other system work that we're at least in our region correcting now. And so it's always good to learn from from things that haven't went quite so well. And so I appreciate that specificity. I apologize that I didn't get a chance to really dig into the whole larger document. So all of my thinking is really based on the executive summary. So I think you've pulled out some good key elements that are consistent.
I really appreciate all this, and there's some of it that is directly aligned with, you know, the primary purpose of the hubs and some of the current funding. We need to think about if we're asking hubs to do things that are in addition to sort of the scope or what they're funded to do, we have to be really considerate about how much funding we have and what is possible within the scope of that, or if we need to find additional resources. So that's the only thing that's going through my mind now. But overall, you know, convening, planning, helping connect the dots. That's pretty much why we have hubs.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. I think, you know, with Joel representing DELC and Kate representing OHA, and those are obviously the two biggest state agencies in the home visiting world, and certainly those on the call today. I think just having you all weigh in on your reaction to these recommendations, where you see your agency taking a leadership role potentially. So I'm hoping before this call ends in 15 minutes, you can hear from Kate and perhaps more from Joel from the leadership standpoint. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah. 2 more quick slides to go through. And again, as I said before, we sent that report out knowing people would not have had a chance to really dig into it because it is a meaty report, but wanting to get it at least give you a flavor today of like what's in there. So hopefully that'll encourage you to go to the document and read it more deeply before our next meeting. So 2 more high-level recommendations that came up. This was something that has come up before, but it really came through very clearly around like, this is a place where state could lead, like help us do this community awareness, education. What is home visiting? Why is it important? Why should I say yes? Why should families say yes to it? And then how do we do that in ways to get those messages out to all the different communities that we want, that we think could benefit from home visiting and that may not be as open to it as we might want them to be. So this was a huge ask from the regions. Like, we don't need to all be doing this ourselves. Where's the state level like work could happen? You can go to the next slide. And then financing, I won't spend a lot of time on this because a lot of these things, I was like, oh, these things are happening already. So this is great. Not that we're coming up with a lot of funding, but we are doing the funding analysis. I think developing a 4-year strategic plan to increase funding is a great thing that maybe we should be talking about some more moving forward. Trying to find those funds, Joel, that you're talking about to ensure all regions have some kind of base level funding for early childhood home visiting systems improvement. And then, of course, identifying resources to more fully fund it across the state and to continue to do that collective cross-program advocacy work that Kara's getting us started on. So those are the high-level sort of financing recommendations to move forward. Okay. So again, I think, Sue, coming back to your question, you know, thinking about where are some like immediate actions, maybe things that are already in the works through some of the things that you know about. What are things we can do, and then who can really be leading the work moving forward? Yeah, Kate.
You saw me come on mute. So to your point, Sue, I have been thinking a lot about these things as we've been going through it. And there's a lot that can be done. I mean, there's some really tactical things like the MOUs, like the templates, like just getting people to get in the same room together. I will share, you know, the bulk, when we talk about OHA is huge, right? So the bulk of this work is actually in public health. And right now, just for contextual pieces, public health at the local level are really struggling. They've fallen off the COVID fiscal cliff and just don't have a whole lot of extra bandwidth. It's just contextual. It's what could we do to support them? And one of the things I'm thinking about is like, who sets the expectations? Who has the authority to say, you know, this is what we expect out of local public health? And so I think we would need to work with public health leadership. Naomi Adeline Biggs is our new public health director, and she comes from Polk County and really understands public health, was a huge advocate of home visiting there. So I'm thinking if we could engage her along with, you know, the council or DELC leadership to come together to say, you know, these are expectations we have. we also have to bring in local public health because they actually rule the world. And they're the coalition of local health officers, CLOES it's called, would need to be brought in. And I think we might run into a few bumps there just because this is one of like a huge amount of work that they do. And their focus when it gets, resource scarce is to hunker down on what are the requirements of public health, which home visiting is not a requirement. It's a really good upstream piece of work that they're committed to, but may not have all the resources for. So just setting that context, but I think that's the route that we go. Because if we can have the carrots as well as the context, the expectation, I think we can bring public health to the table. And it is in some places, obviously, like Yamhill's a great example. I do think Lane County has a lot of potential. I think a lot of their home visiting is within Lane County Public Health. And certainly we've done a lot of work in Central Oregon. And so there are definitely places where we can get some momentum and have some lessons learned and whatnot. But as we know, you've seen one county. So it's all a little bit different. Those are just some of my initial thoughts.
I think it is important to note, though, we did an analysis here in Central Oregon, and it's true that public health has more funding, but we actually have more clients being served out in other programs that are more paraprofessional and doula and culturally specific. And so I think figuring out kind of how you balance all of that and support both, because I think all of those programs are needed. And so that's
Right.
the task.
Well, and that's the richness of having the array of home visiting programs, right? It's not one size fits all. It's what does a family need at that point in time and want at that point in time.
And again, that goes back to what Joel was saying. This really is what hubs were envisioned to be, is to be able to be the convener and coordinator in each region. So to me, a next step is, make sure we're talking with the hubs about how would we work this out to make sure every hub does have the ability to develop a coordinated plan. Kali, pass to you.
So my wondering is about OHA very specifically in that conversation. And Kate, you've heard me say this before, there is not really a prioritization of birth to 5, whether it's public health or behavioral health. So to me, my wondering is what do we have to do to elevate the birth to 5 space for OHA so that OHA could be a leader in this? I think absent that, it's sort of tinkering at edges. And I feel like this work is really important, but to have the leadership not prioritize the whole space across the entire agency is highly, it's a big impediment. So I'm just wondering, there's something that the council can do maybe, because I know OHA sits on the council. Like I wonder if these conversations have been had, and are there ways to, I don't know, emphasize the importance. I don't know all the politics of OHA, I'll be honest with you. I just know that is necessary for us to move things in a substantial, meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, that kind of a thing. I mean, we are now just internally creating a children's governance group. So it would be leadership as well as then managers like my level to try to really pull that together. We've tried for biennia after biennia to create a children's health unit within OHA. Never gotten any traction. We had a child health medical director, Dana Harkinani, way back when, and that went away. She came back as our medical director, but then had to focus on pharmaceuticals. But so it really has been, I mean, I thought it was a really great win when finally social determinants of health became kind of all the rage. And it's like, well, that's us, but it's a lot of competing.
Yeah, so how are we louder? I mean, I know, talked to Dana about this too. I mean, we tried out, the FBI has tried advocacy on it. I'm just not clear on what it would take. And so I know we're willing to do more if more could help, but not what the lever is.
Yeah, and we've been trying to do the lever internally and then externally as well. So, you know, I think about like the leadership that comes, and Dr. Hathi is awesome. And when I look at what's on her plate, it's just a lot of stuff that's she's got to deal with versus, you know, pausing and really being able to elevate up, you know, where we make the pivot from dealing with the current issues to preventing the primary prevention work, which is what this is. So I hope I'm not throwing my leadership under the bus. They're great, but they have a lot of competing. So just for the record, they're awesome. And they have a lot of competing priorities. But I do think, you know, the more that maybe the council could spend time, I don't know, with Dr. Hathi, with Dave, that could maybe help. I know when Pat Allen was here, he was very invested, but he came from sort of an early childhood space, and that makes a big difference. Yeah. Sorry, that's about all I have to offer. But I do think if we can start to also engage Naomi, the public health director, Naomi Adeline Biggs, that could be another point of lever. It would be really great.
And I was just going to say, Kate, also, I think another opportunity, and I know Kali's been very involved in this already, is the Momnibus package that Senator Reynolds is pushing through, you know, the legislature.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of opportunities there to make sure that early childhood becomes the talk of the town, at least for some of the committees and for a while.
Yes, and I think so. It's more, it's not home visiting focused though, is the issue, right? It's a lot of other things. It's housing, which is well needed for the pregnant and postpartum families, right? It's targeted universal basic income, which is really important to stabilizing pregnant and postpartum families. It's SUD supports, substance use disorder supports. And along with that workforce, so the perinatal workforce, which is a big one. What was the last one? I don't know, I had them all listed out here earlier. Oh, the hospital. So getting some changes to hospital regulations where substance use disorder can be a primary diagnosis for hospital stays for prenatal as well as postpartum birthing people that need that stabilization, those 5 days of stabilization in the hospital. So it's a lot of clinical stuff, and it's a lot of social determinant stuff too.
Yep.
Okay. And where's home visiting and all of that too.
So we have to wrap at this point. Good discussion. No, Kate, I really appreciate the information always. So we do need to wrap up. We will be able to at least report, obviously, to the council on the landscape report is out. Make sure they're aware of it. Maybe do a brief little overview and some of the proposed steps forward with the recommendations, including we need to engage with the hubs, obviously on a coordinated plan. We need to look at race and awareness, et cetera, et cetera. With that, Brittany, you listened the entire time. Do you have any final thoughts before we roll off your last meeting with us?
No, I was telling Beth and Rebecca when I first met that I'm somebody who is like a sponge. I take up a lot of information. So I was writing stuff down and getting a couple of notes to kind of get familiarized, but it sounds like great work, and I'm so excited to be a part of the committee, the team, and contribute where I can.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brittany. I think I might have skipped over something on the agenda, the traditional health workers invitation. And I don't know if we have a quick update on that for having someone from traditional health workers.
We have Sue, you can update, but where I understand it is that you sent the invitation and they went to their executive committee, and now they came back with maybe some additional questions for us from their folks on the OHA side who work with that group. So I think we'll hopefully have someone who might be willing to join us for our next meeting. And yeah, thank you.
Great. Peg, did you have any final comments you want to make? You're good to go. Well, I'll just thank everybody for your time, your participation. Sue, Peg, Beth, we'll probably be talking before the Early Learning Council meeting
Yep.
about what we can actually convey to the council and any specifics. But appreciate everybody's time, everybody's efforts on this. We are moving forward. It's great stuff. Thanks to all.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Great meeting.